when you're in charge of an institution, and I was a CEO of the bank, when you have doubts, you cannot communicate your doubts to the team members, because then they will feel that the leadership is not here and is not leading. So the leader has to lead, and cannot show any doubt at any time. And if you have doubt as a CEO, it's a bit difficult from time to time to communicate with your board as well, because your board can say, well, the CEO does not know what to do, so is he up to the task?
Welcome, I'm your host Stefano, and this is When Leaders Talk, a podcast about leadership and most importantly about leaders. The guest of today's episode is Jean-Pierre Mustier. Jean-Pierre is one of the most prominent figures in the banking ecosystem, not just in France, where he's coming from, but in Europe, and I would say worldwide. The pivotal moment in his career was when he joined UniCredit, a very important bank in Europe, and later became CEO. And with UniCredit, he has obtained great results through very important transformations. And actually, his career in the banking system is very peculiar, not just for the results he has achieved, but the way he has achieved these results. He's very focused on ethical decision-making, leading by example, and innovation. I would say that the characteristic of his leadership are basically resilience, open-mindedness to, as I said, innovation and new approaches, and much more. So I'm sure that you will enjoy this episode that is very special and full of great insights and food for thoughts. But before I leave the floor to Jean-Pierre, please subscribe to this channel, because in this way we can have great guests like Jean-Pierre, and we can keep the conversation going on leadership and explore even more. And also you can follow me on other social media like LinkedIn, like Facebook, Instagram. So with no further ado, Jean-Pierre Mustier. So Jean-Pierre, the question that I start with this podcast is the same, and this is, what is your definition of leadership?
Well, I think leadership is first leading by example. When you ask colleagues at work, or people when you're doing any kind of actions or exercise, if you want people to follow you, you need to do to yourself what you ask others to do, basically. And so for me, leadership is leading by example, motivating the people you work with to come with you, and make sure that when they do so, they can be properly rewarded, not rewarded on a financial point of view, but rewarded in terms of appreciation that you can communicate to people, so that they feel that what they've been doing is something which is the right thing.
I mean, your unique experience is pretty much focused or concentrated, if you want, in the banking system, where actually, I'm sure that there are a lot of forces pulling. So leading by example must be difficult at times, right? I'm sure that there are political issues, not just economical issues, but also political personalities coming and asking for things. How do you navigate those challenges, those big challenges?
I think in a bank, but in any other institution, you can have a different type of stakeholders who are not internal stakeholders. I mean, by internal stakeholders, I mean clients or team members or shareholders. So, but you have to deal with all stakeholders. What is extremely important, of course, for a private institution is to manage its client, internal stakeholders, meaning the team members, and the shareholders in the proper way. And beside the clients, an institution has human capital and financial capital. And the human capital is probably, the most important to a certain extent. If you don't have the human capital, the financial capital cannot work. So that's a sine qua non condition for things to be successful. The client can come second, of course. So, what is important is, first of all, both for the client, the team members, and the shareholders, to explain in simple words what is the vision or what you want to do. But usually the vision does not have to be something complicated. It needs to be something simple. And if you do something and you explain something simple, just for instance, what you just do, but in simple words, then people, clients, team members, and shareholders understand what you do, understand what you want to do, and they follow you. That's the first thing. And the second thing is to put things in perspective in the way on how you do things. And, just to give a sense of ethic, if you want, or behaviors toward the client and also toward the team members. And so if you combine the vision, but which is more, which direction do we go, and, how we go there, and what are our values, basically, you can do things very simply. And to be concrete, because when I hear vision or values, I feel consultants or something which might be a little bit superficial. No, let's be very, very concrete. Is the banks I was working on, I always try to give a vision. For instance, in my latest bank, I said, we're a simple pan-European bank focused at serving our clients thanks to our network. One sentence, okay? But when people hear that, they know that we are simple, so we don't think which are too concrete. Pan-European, focused about serving the client thanks to our network. That's enough. Then in terms of ethic, you need to have few words in order to explain what you do. When I'm saying ethics, values. And so for us, it was only two words, ethics and respect, and one principle, do the right thing. Instead of having 6 values, we say we put the client in the center of the organization, we do this, we do that, that everybody else is using. If you have something simple, which is we do the right thing, which apply to the client and to the team members, then you give with the vision a direction, and we do the right thing, the way to do things. It's simple, and everybody understands. You can use that with all the stakeholders.
Well, doing the right thing is it is a simple instruction, if you want, but still, actually discerning what is right and what is wrong, that's what is complicated at times, right? Because I guess you might find yourself in a moment where conflicting values, if you want, so it's hard to understand really it's a blurred line between the right and wrong. So what are the values, actually talking about this, what are the values that you use your North Star, as a reference point? I know you like boats and sailing. So like, what is your compass, basically?
Well, as I said, do the right thing with the motto, if you want, the principle. But we had two words before, ethics and respect. So we need to behave in an ethical way with our clients and with our team members. And we have to respect our clients and our team members, and of course, our shareholders. So I think it's what I was telling the team members, but which I apply as well in life, is when you're faced with a choice, which could be a difficult one, is do I behave in an ethical way, first of all? And which kind of interaction can I have with others? Is it respectful? Okay? And is it done in a proper manner? And so if you do that, you do the right thing. And I think, when you're faced with a difficult issue, you tell yourself, I'm not going to do something which is against the interest of the firm or against the interest of other people, but I just do it. And if it's not what I like, if it goes against my own interest, it doesn't matter. I do the right thing. And so it was an easy compass for the team members when they were asking me, but what shall I do? Say, do the right thing. But what is it? Hey, think about what you feel is the right thing. And, people just get that. And after they behave in such a way. And it's important, for an institution, Then the team members can go to the client and say, in our firm, we do the right thing. It's a very powerful message, specifically for a bank, because, people say bankers, there's all these, bad reputation or bad image of bankers. But if you say, I do the right thing, then you build up, a perception and a reputation.
And that's what creates a strong culture in an organization. Once you have the values well defined and clear, and once you have the behaviors that actually do comply with those values, they refer, everything is done looking at those values as a strict reference, then the culture is strong. And that's why, as you said earlier, leadership is leading by example, is giving the example and let the other get inspired and motivated by your own actions. And in your career, you went through very difficult moments. And I would like you to ask you to share an episode of your life, or your professional life, in which actually it's been hard to keep those values and to keep your course straight, because everything else was pretty much, I'm not saying falling apart, but quite kind of, you find yourself on a rough sea.
Yes. Well, you always find yourself in a rough sea at one stage in a career. So, what I think is important is to understand that career in whatever institution, can never be linear. You can never go one step after another and improve all the time. And from time to time, you have setback. And what is important is actually to rebound and to rebuild what you've been doing. It was a German philosopher was saying, what does not kill you makes you stronger. It was Nietzsche who was saying that. And I do believe that is absolutely true. And that in life, you become stronger and better what you do if you have setbacks, because that's when you learn, basically. If you're always successful, you believe in what you do and then you fail in a miserable way. So, having setbacks and challenging yourself is actually important. So it happens all the time. But let me give you an example of 42 years ago, and then a recent one about leading by example. I was studying in a military school, and so I did 1 year of military service as part of my studies. And when I joined the regiment, we were trained to be officers in 3 months. So you can see the level of expertise we had, which was very, very good. But so I arrived in my regiment, and some of the team members in my platoon, which have been put in charge, were not behaving properly. So I told them, you're going to do push-up. You see that push-ups, is a way in a regiment just to get people, aligned. And so I had 30 guys doing push-ups, and I was counting, And then the general in charge, or the colonel in charge of the regiment, was walking by, and he looked at me and he said, young man, when you punish your team, you have to do the punishment with them. And that was a good lesson in life, actually, about leading by example. The team does not behave properly. We do 50 push-ups. You start doing the push-ups, actually, and you have to do them better than them, just to lead by example. That was a very early life example. But afterwards, it's, about going through difficult situations, which are, tough for an institution. And I joined a bank in Italy almost 10 years ago now, and the bank was in an extremely tough situation where we had to raise a lot of capital, cut a lot of cost, ask a lot of people to leave, almost 20% of the workforce. It was like around 20,000 people. So it's a lot of people, basically. And when you think about it, you feel that it's something which can be very demotivating. But, we work with all the team members, with the union. We explain what we were doing. We raise the capital. We sold the asset we need to sell. We adjust things. We work using, early retirement in order to make sure that people can just evolve without, having a behavior which was not socially acceptable. Of course, under immense pressure from all the stakeholders. But at that stage, you just have to do what you think is the right thing, because you will have comments, advice, pressure not to do the things, basically, which can be painful. But nevertheless, And the nevertheless mean that the most difficult thing was to say, okay, we need to cut costs in this institution. So it means asking some people to go. How do we do that in a socially and humanly acceptable way? Because that's a personal drama if you do that. And I think that was for me the most difficult thing to do, which is to under financial constraints, you create some human issues, and is finance really a reason to create human issues or not? And how can you do that, in a way which would be acceptable? So that was tough, but I think doing it properly is the right way to behave in such case.
It is tough. It is tough, and actually, these kind of decisions, those decisions that have an impact on other human lives, actually can have also a great impact. So ethical decision making is something that is so human, and it stays in the human dimension of leadership. And despite all the tools that we have today, despite all the artificial intelligence or whatever, that's where the leader is still very much human, as I said, and also quite alone. I don't know if you share this, the loneliness, the concept of loneliness of leaders in the moment you have to decide this. I don't know if you have ever experienced something like that.
No, it's of course it's true that when you're in charge of an institution, and I was a CEO of the bank, when you have doubts, you cannot communicate your doubts to the team members, because then they will feel that the leadership is not here and is not leading. So the leader has to lead, and cannot show any doubt at any time. And if you have doubt as a CEO, it's a bit difficult from time to time to communicate with your board as well, because your board can say, well, the CEO does not know what to do, so is he up to the task? And is he going to give her the right advice? So from time to time, you might be faced with a situation where, you might or you might not do what to do. But if you, open up to people, you listen to people to get their views, and, rather than expressing a doubt, being open and, getting advice and then deciding. The worst thing for a leader is not to decide, but having listened to others, not necessarily, getting from your first impression, which can be always wrong, being able to amend what you think you should be doing based on the feedback, then, you can overcome your doubts and move ahead. But I think that, this is something which can be as well managed in different ways. And at a difficult time, during the crisis we had, just after COVID, where the situation was a bit tense, and situation with my boards was a bit tense as well. I used a psychologist who was somebody training sportsmen doing high-level competition, basically. And so we were having discussions about, how to interact with the team in very tense and difficult situation in sports, which applies to business as well. And I think to be able to exchange with somebody, not about your core business issues, but about what do I do in order to get the team work with me, is important and useful. And for quite a while, I felt that by doing that, I would be weak. But in fact, you're not weak if you ask for advice of somebody and you can share your doubts. The only thing is to be able to share your doubts with the right person, and not with people who will feel that there is an issue. So, I think one has to agree that you can not always know what to do. You have to have the humility to put yourself, into question about, do I do the things which are the right ones, just doing the right things, but doing, things which are right ones slightly different, and get advice from others, both from a business point of view, but also from a, emotional intelligence point of view in terms of interaction with the different parties you have to interact.
I totally agree on what you just said. It is there is this concept of leading by vulnerability But it doesn't mean to really, as you say, show your doubts everywhere. But understanding that you don't have all the information, you have your problems, you have doubts, as you said, but also doing something about it. So, as you mentioned, asking to the right person, asking the people you trust, for example, or they know they can help you, and then you solve the problem, and then you show the leader that you are, the strong leadership that you need to drive a very complex organization, like, I guess, a bank. I have no experience, of course, in banking, but I guess it's there are a lot of implications in a decision coming from the leader, the CEO, for example, of the Italian bank that you mentioned. And one of the things that I know you use is this being open to innovation, right? Trying to find also a different way to approach things. I don't know if there is any example that you can mention here on how innovation actually, or thinking in a different way, helped you in your career.
I think that you have to think laterally and to look at what others are doing best to see if it applies to yourself. And that could be in the way to manage people, that could be in a way to handle a certain number of issues, or in a way to look at different development. So let me give you a few examples, basically. One which is about what is the kind of best optimization you could have in an organization, which has usually every organization has complex processes. And so, you can look at trying to simplify things. And so when I was young, I was using something which was, developed by General Electric and its CEO at the time, Jack Welch, which was the Six Sigma approach. And so, we looked at it, and we tried to train our team members by having them learning the Six Sigma approach and being trained, basically, which at the time, and now it's Six Sigma is everybody knows about it, but at the time it was a little bit new, and you needed to have the proper approach. And it was very interesting because it was getting people who were involved in a process just to work together in order to solve it. And you have a virtuous circle, meaning that when you get a group of people to try to solve the problem, then they can apply the methodology or the approach to other problems, basically, and move ahead. So that was interesting development, and we did that. More recently, what I've been doing was to involve younger people in an organization. I think it's very important to rely and trust young people in organization who could have a different view, specifically at a time where technology is changing, and maybe people who are more expertise, have a very strong asset, which is their expertise, but the liability, which is that they usually are very slow to be willing to change their behaviors, because they've been doing things for 10 years, and why should I do things differently as it has been working? It's the usual thing. And if you take young people in an organization of a different part of the organization, if you interact with them and give them a mission and say, look, we have a process to review and to optimize. You're part of the front office, the back office, the IT side, the accounting side. You work together and you try to come back to see how you could improve that. Then you empower a group of young people who have the energy and the willingness to look at things differently. And then we'll come up with a solution, and then it's a snowball effect, because you can ask other people to do it. They see that it's something where the management is interesting. Then the managers see that younger people in the organization are looking at changing things, so they have to look at it as well, because the example is not coming from the top; it's coming from the middle managers or the younger people, and that's it. So that's a way to change things as well. And the last one is about using technology. So now, when you speak about artificial intelligence, it's the buzzword of the day. But a few years ago, before AI was a thing of the day, we were willing to look at solving a specific problem in the bank for marketing to clients. And I met the CEO of a company which was a bit controversial at the time, maybe still is, the CEO of Palantir at an event in Germany. Palantir is this data company, which is very good at what they do. And, they have a reputation because they've been working with the CIA in terms of data management. So when people saying, "Oh, is it a right arm of the US and whatever?" I mean, Palantir is a private company, and they are very good. And so I asked him, "What do you do for banks?" He said, "Oh, not much." So they worked with us and did two things which were very interesting. One is in banks, but in many companies, your set of data is not homogeneous. So you have a various database, basically, which don't speak together. And so they put a layer on top of all this database in order to create a massive data lake, but using database which were not communicating together. It's a first start, because when you want to use technology, information technology, it's information. So you have to have access to data, and the data has to make sense, basically. And then they allowed us, or as part of their offering of their service, they allowed us to use their engine in terms of, machine learning engine. Now you call that not machine learning, but artificial intelligence. And we started to apply that to marketing, but also to control. And, then the team members learn how to use that. And then, they came up with, very clever ideas about it. So there it was about, breaking a taboo. Technology could help, and then applying it, and convincing people that machine by themselves can do things, but they are not going to replace human. Human by themselves can do things, but machine plus human is the right solution in order to be able to make progress. And we should not reject the machine, if I may say, or in this sense, the machine learning software and the data lake for reasons which might not be the right ones.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, the sentence I have always done like this is a killer of performance, especially today, where, as you mentioned, technology is evolving so rapidly, and now artificial intelligence is everywhere. So we need to learn. It's very important that we need to learn how to use those new tools, because artificial intelligence is a tool, no more than that. And also adapt to it, because it has an impact. I mean, we cannot just say that artificial intelligence will not change things. Of course, it would change many things. I think I will define it as a winning mentality is really, okay, this is happening. There is nothing I can do to stop it, but I can adapt my way of doing things to use it at best, and I can change my way also to work to still have an impact and some agency on the results of my organization or company, whatever it is. And what do you say?
Let me interrupt you on that, because
Sure.
I fully agree with what you said. There's one thing with artificial intelligence, or with machine learning, whatever name you use, which is important, which is the ethical approach. So in other words, one has to be very careful about the use of such system, which can be used in wrong ways to recreate fake interviews of people, because now you can fake the voice, you can fake the image of people, and do things where you manipulate opinions. And we have seen that with the trolls being sent by different countries to interact with elections, or with other topic concerning country. But as well, the ethical approach is to make sure, in the case of artificial intelligence, maybe let's take a concrete example, being used to run credit process, to extend credit to a client, that the machine in itself does not have a bias. So it's very difficult ex ante to see if the machine has a bias. When the machine is learning, and there could be some data which create a bias, willingly or unwillingly, but most of the time it's unwillingly. So checking that the machine does not have in itself an ethical bias. It's a bit strange to mention machine and ethics in the same time, because the machine does not think and clearly does not know what is ethics, but the outcome of what the machine does could have an ethical bias, basically. And to check that ex ante is difficult, but ex post is absolutely necessary. So with artificial intelligence, having the proper ethical guidelines will be very important. We have seen recent events at different companies, where, the people wanted to slow down the development to make sure that, they can be compatible with, human, behaviors, human nature, and don't go too quickly without assessing the impact. I think it makes a lot of sense. But I mean, so is it slowing down things, or is it putting the right guidelines? Not necessarily asking the states to do that, because human beings have to take the initiative first rather than relying on a state to define the guidelines. And for a company, this ethical interaction, and it would be even more important in the future because of that, because you might lose a little bit the control of the ethical angle of what you do.
Yeah, and I think one of the case study, one of the most famous case studies to one of Amazon, talking about biases, because the Amazon used some artificial intelligence for recruiting people, and they found out that the artificial intelligence was discriminating against women and minorities just because the database that was built upon was contaminated itself. Basically, I guess the recruiting system in Amazon has always been more favorable towards white men than anything else, and that's how the machine has learned, right? And that's where the problem comes. And the ethical, defining an ethical framework on how to use artificial intelligence within a company is also a great way to build trust on artificial intelligence, because I guess many people, even employees, might have a kind of skeptical approach to it because they don't want to lose their job. But having a clear idea of what the machine can or cannot do, or what you can do with the machine or you cannot do with the machine, is great. And this goes back on what you said earlier about leading by example, because the leader is the first one who has to show how to use the artificial intelligence, and most importantly, how not to use it. What is the things that you don't want to do with that. That's I would say the fundamental piece for thinking about introducing artificial intelligence tools in an organization. That's actually one of the things I discuss in a workshop that I hold on this matter. So thank you. It's been really a great issue on this. Well, but talking about you, I want to go back on what you said earlier, because you have done 1 year, if I'm not wrong, of military service, right? So it's kind of a short period, and yet, is there something that you have learned in the military, other than leading by example, doing push-ups, I guess, beyond that, something that helped you to be the great leader that you are right now?
No, I'm not a great leader, and I'm not an executive anymore. But yes, it was a very short period, but very decisive, if I may say, in my personal and emotional education, in a sense that when you're very young, I was 20, you have a team of professional soldiers who are all older than you. You need to build their trust, and you need to make decisions on topics on which you don't have necessarily all the information and all the expertise. So you have to get the advice of people who are your subordinates, but about what they think we should do, how to do it. And you need as well to make sure that the team or the platoon, just achieve everything, and that the last one will make it to the end, basically. And so, the concept of motivating people, making decision, making sure that the team is going to succeed by having the weakest members of the team, coming to the arrival lane, is something which has been, very important to be applied afterwards in a company. At the same time, it gives you principle of discipline. and principle of execution. You have to be disciplined, and in the army. But when I was a paratrooper, and you have to be disciplined, because if you're not disciplined, you can die, basically, when you jump out of a plane. But you have as well to execute, and you cannot be in the army with a platoon and not making a decision and thinking about it for a few days. You get the information, and even if it's not the best decision, or even if it's wrong, you have to make a decision. And that was as well something which was very important to me. Beyond the values of the respect that I learned, of respecting everybody, and everybody with the team, and the push up with the team, where you're unhappy about something, but if you're unhappy, you have to do things with everybody. And so that's something which lasted with me. And just like to comment about one thing, which is leading by example is not only behaving properly, it's also taking actions with you, which can be unpleasant, but that you have to take. And and in the army you learn that, basically. But when I joined the bank where I was chief executive, I knew we needed to restructure the bank. I knew we needed to ask people to go. So leading by example for me was, before I joined, to say, I'm going to cut my remuneration by 40%, because I think that we are going to have to ask people to make sacrifice. We are going to ask people to leave the bank. And so, I need to show that I'm going to work with them, and that, I'm going to take actions as well against me, if I may say. Cutting your salary is nothing like, losing your job, but it showed that you have some kind of solidarity with people. And we applied that as well during COVID, where management team and myself decided to give our remuneration to some cause supporting people who were affected by COVID, so medical staff in hospital, or people or families being impacted. So, the military, I think, teaches you about discipline, about execution, and about solidarity as well. And these were values that I kept for myself in my professional life.
I like solidarity. I think that, I've been in the military a little bit longer compared to you, only 31 years. But the one thing that I really have characterized, I would say, my leadership development is the team building, the working in a team. And I guess, in the Navy, you have the crew that is really complex. It's a team of teams, as General McChrystal would say. And it is, a different part of the ship. They basically, despite they are confined in the same piece of metal, the ship is just a big piece of metal. But at the end of the day, they move along, they do things in parallel, and they work together. And all together comes results actually in an effective ship. If, of course, the leadership of the ship is strong enough and good enough, and then is able to keep everyone together. Because you have people within your team, and everyone is bringing their problems. Everyone is bringing their weaknesses, or as well as the strength and skills and the good things, and you cannot really separate the professional from the family member, from the father or the mother, right? It's all together, it's all combined. And the challenge of a leader is to look at the person as a whole, not just as the professional you hope is cold-blooded probably, or doesn't have any problem back home, but it's not like that. And at times, especially when you are away for a long time, or when you work a lot, I'm sure that you have had projects that require long hours, and even in the office. That's when you need to really express your solidarity, as you say, and probably I might add really establishing some stronger relationship, using more empathy to understand what's going on the other person. It's not always easy, right? In urgency, emergency, and difficult situations, sometimes tests your ability of leading by example, and being so open to understand the individual that you have in front of us. But I have a question about discipline, and I know it's a weird question, but because the military culture is structured on strong discipline, right? So it's either you follow the rule or you get punished in a way or another. It can be push-ups, as you mentioned, or not. I have a question. Do you think this type of discipline, this way of enforcing rules, is still necessary today, or can it be replaced with more trying to inspire more, motivate more, so people follow the rules, I would say by their own choice more than by being obliged to?
I think that if you put a set of rules and you oblige people to follow them, you're not going to be successful, basically. And you need to make sure that people adhere fully to the goal of the company, and to the objective you have. And by doing that, they will follow the rule, basically. So if you have a repressive action rather than a positive action, it's not going to be successful in terms of dynamic. While, I mean, my very small stint in the army showed me that in the army you might not have the choice from time to time, but just to be repressive, because otherwise it's a matter of life or death. So you cannot discuss and whatever. Not that I was ever exposed to such issues, but that's the way it could be. So I think in a company you might have some issues where you have to be extremely disciplined, specifically when you take risk. In a bank, when you manage capital, but your capital is here for you to take risk in terms of credit, in terms of financial market, in terms of operational risk. So there, the discipline is extremely important. But the right to make mistake is important as well. But the right to make mistakes should not be confused with weakness of the management not taking action if mistakes are made on a repetitive basis. So everybody has the right to make mistakes, basically. But if the mistake become repetitive, then it's a problem. But one has to be very careful not to have a system where you're going to freeze your organization because nobody wants to do anything, because the rules are such that it's better for people not to do anything rather than taking risk if they are sanctioned, basically. So there's a company is not the army, basically, and you have to manage people very, very differently. The concept of discipline, is important because there are a certain number of things to do, but I was educated for a few years in a Jesuit school, and the Jesuits have the concept of auto-discipline, which is actually the best one, where it's not the rules which guide you to what you do, but it's making sure that you put in the mind of people that they have themselves to be disciplined, and it's their own choice to follow the rules, basically. And the Jesuits are absolutely brilliant about education. And so, we didn't have, I was 18 at the time, we didn't have coercive rules, but everybody was behaving properly, because the Jesuits instill with us the sense of self-discipline, if you want, which is extremely important. And if in a company, you can apply that as well, then you're successful, rather than having a coercive system, which is not going to be successful, and which actually might have a negative impact, that people are not going to do anything or not going to take risk. And when you're in a company, you have to take risk, and you have the right to fail, not only by not following the rule, but by trying to invest in something, developing a product, developing a current relationship. If you never fail, that you never take the right risk in order to achieve something. So you have to encourage that as well. So there's if you want a balance between having the proper discipline, but at the same time giving the ability to everybody to develop. And this is why I mentioned taking younger members of the team, to give them some task where you empower them and you pass the message that the institution believe in younger people in order to drive the change or in order to develop other things. Not to say that more mature professionals are not useful for a company, and they are. They have the expertise, the memory, so they are very, very useful. But at the same time, you need to think laterally, and you need to empower younger people, to try, a certain number of process or ideas to see if they will be successful or not. And you can never be successful if you don't fail. Failure is the best way to be successful in the future.
Failure is the best teacher. You're absolutely right.
Exactly.
Well, it can be tricky, right? Some people do not react well when they fail. I guess there are someone that probably are naive enough to understand, to think that you can do things without taking risk and without making mistakes, but it's not true. I mean, we do mistakes every I'm not saying every day, but quite often. And of course, some mistakes have a big impact. Others are much smaller, but still, it's really the essence of the learning. That's the essence of understanding and adapt to your circumstances. Going back to the banking system, because that you mentioned earlier, you say that that one of the things that you enforce, if you want, is to listen to even young generations and learning from them and listen to their point of view, their perspective. I wonder what is that you have noticed, in these generational shifts that we have. How does new generations coming into the workplace approach it? How do they see the professional life compared to you that have a longer experience?
I think you have to look at different things. In a company, what is important is, first of all, is the clients. I mean, a company without clients does not exist, basically. And a new generation can actually, when you have individual clients, basically individual people are clients, like a bank has individual clients, can actually understand better what are the needs of the client or what are the changes of the needs of the clients. So, that's something which is important to listen to, because otherwise you just remain, within a framework which, is too rigid and which can become prehistoric to a certain extent, and everybody knows what happened to the dinosaurs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as we discussed, is to have a different way to handle things, which might be the use of technology, but also a perpendicular approach to some of the topics you're dealing with, which can give better quality of service, better efficiency, in the process. And by mixing younger people together, when you mix different type of knowledge and expertise, you then could have innovation. Innovation very rarely comes from a silo where people are just expert of one field. It comes when you mix up people from different fields, and then they can generate an alternative view of a problem, because they each use their own skills and they mix them together. And I think younger population or younger employees are always very keen to learn, because they have developed expertise, but they still have to develop more. So they are very happy to exchange with others and to progress on that. So new product or better service quality or different approach can come by this mixing of expertise, where I said, when you want to improve a process, you move from people who are on the marketing side to a product side to the IT side and to the accounting side, for instance. So that, I think, is very important for the younger generation. And then there is a last issue, which is the ability to create an environment where people are motivated and where they feel they can build up their career. I mean, the younger generation has a tendency to rotate and to move from one employer to another, much more than the previous generation. When you're in a large institution, you have actually very different companies within the companies, meaning that you could have the sales organization, you could have the product organization, you could have the IT, you could have different countries. So, in fact, you can provide to the younger generation the ability to rotate from one job to another, from one country to another, so that they can build up their expertise while staying within the company. And I try to encourage all the time, by communicating with this younger generation. I was organizing twice a week a breakfast with the CEO, where for an hour I was listening to 10 or 12 younger colleagues, basically telling them about what we're doing in the bank, the vision, and listening to them about what they were doing, the issue they were facing, and the ideas they are there. And I think that giving them this ability to develop internally within the bank, which is if you want, the emotional link with the company, where people believe that they are not only paid, so which is their financial remuneration, but they have a non-substantiated remuneration, if you want, or which is their ability to develop their career and their own ways of doing things, which I think is important in the proper work-life balance. And I think the younger generation wants to have a work-life balance, which is probably better than the older one. And there as well, specifically, post-COVID, where remote working, becomes a norm, we have to see how the work-life balance can be the best achieved, because it's too easy, to be, within, the attention frame of a colleague by sending a mail, calling for Zoom and whatever at any hours of the day. So respecting the work-life balance of everybody, specifically the younger generation, is important, and it can teach us a lot about that.
I love what you say, and actually, one of the things that I have appreciated, one of the many things I appreciated in my military life, is as you mentioned earlier, the military is always a big organization, right? So I had, like many, the opportunity to really change often. I started as a surface warfare officer. So operations and communications were my field, and then I switched to intelligence, and then I switched to logistics, and then I switched to political, strategic, very, very high level position. And I love the fact that every 2-3 years I was going to do something different. And even within the same position, I had the opportunity to talk to people from different countries, meet people from different cultures, and exchange ideas with those. And it was so enriching. I think I consider myself lucky on that, on the point, and that has contributed to build the person that I am, the leader that I am, and in such a deep way, if you want.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and I think in a company it shouldn't be left by chance, for the different colleagues. So when I was meeting my colleagues for this breakfast with the CEO session, they were asking me, do you have some advice for us for our career? And I said, all the time, I was telling them, don't have a career plan. It's the worst thing you could do. So try to go outside of your comfort zone while you're still young by building up, different skills and expertise. You're going to feel that you're losing a lot versus people and colleagues who are staying in the same field and being hyper expert. But you will see that if you go out of your comfort zone and you learn more, you're going to be a very good professional at the end. And never forget one thing, which is that the difference between a successful employee in an institution and a less successful is never because of IQ. Because what we do in normal companies is not very difficult. You don't need to be a nuclear scientist to be successful in a large company, but you need to have the right EQ, meaning that you need to have the ability and the capability to work with others, to motivate your colleagues, and to create a dynamic where people will be happy and willing to work with you on any project. And the way to motivate individuals, as we discussed earlier, is actually a very, very big differentiator between having a good career and having an excellent career, specifically if you go out of your comfort zone regularly and build up a wide expertise.
And this opens the door to the emotional intelligence, and it's another hour conversation. we are running out of time, so I want to ask you my final question. That is, if someone comes to you, Jean-Pierre, and asks for a good advice on how to become a good leader, other than what you just said about being open to get out of the comfort zone and learn something new, what else would you recommend to this person?
I think in addition to what we said, which is go out of your comfort zone, learn how to motivate people, is be yourself. I mean, it's in a company to have normal people who have a normal interaction and very healthy interaction with others is actually very important. And you have too often in companies, after, when people get a little bit more seasoned in the companies and with, more expert, people just, behave maybe not in a natural way, thinking about how they can develop their career against others rather than with others. So if you're yourself, you're a balanced person, you have a natural and sound relationship with others, you're going to be successful. So go outside of your comfort zone, learn different expertise, develop your EQ, and just be yourself without any, career plan is the best way to be successful.
And that's great. Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre, for your wisdom, for having spent time with us, and for sharing your experience, your idea, and your approach on leadership. It's been a great conversation, and I have loved especially your leading by example approach and how actually you apply to it and what it means to do it in a complex environment like the one of banking. So thank you very much for
Thank you, Stefan, for having me. It was a great pleasure.